I stand frozen in the dimly lit conference room, staring at the email that shouldn't be on my screen. My hands shake as I read it again, hoping somehow the words will change. They don't. Keep Alejandro away from the Bellamy account. We need to make sure he stays in his lane. I'll handle his performance review personally. The message is from Javier, my mentor, my supposed champion, the man I trusted like a father. The timestamp shows he sent it 3 months ago, right when I was up for the promotion I didn't get. The historic San Antonio streets outside these glass walls suddenly feel suffocating. 2 years of Sunday dinners at his house, of praying together, of him telling me somos familia aquí. We're family here, all lies. My throat tightens as I scroll through more emails. Each one reveals a carefully orchestrated campaign to keep me trapped in entry-level positions, while Javier took credit for my work. The Bellamy account, my biggest success, he claimed it as his own. I thought God had blessed me with a mentor who understood the struggle of being Latino in corporate America, someone who could guide me past the barriers my parents had faced. Instead, he'd shown me the truth about the man I idolized. The cross I wear beneath my crisp dress shirt feels heavy against my chest. How many times had I thanked Jesus for bringing Javier into my life? How many prayers had I offered in gratitude for this blessing? My perfectly pressed suit, the one Javier helped me pick out, now feels like a costume. The polished shoes, the practiced smile, the careful way I modulate my accent in meetings, it's all part of the mask I've been wearing. A mask that's cracking apart. The sound of evening cleaning crews in the hallway startles me back to reality. I quickly close the emails, my hands trembling as I log off. I shouldn't have been able to access Javier's account, but God has his ways of revealing truth. Walking through the historic district toward my car, I pass the cathedral where I've spent so many lunch hours praying for guidance. The bells toll, and I feel the weight of my own pride. I had put my faith in a man instead of in Christ. Trust in the Lord with all your heart, my abuela always quoted, and lean not on your own understanding. I had done the opposite. I had leaned on my understanding, on my desperate need for a father figure, on my belief that success meant climbing corporate ladders. Sitting in my car, I can't hold back the tears anymore. Not tears of sadness, tears of anger, at Javier, at myself, at a system I thought I could navigate if I just found the right guide. But through the anger, I hear a gentle whisper, the same voice that has been trying to reach me through all my striving and performing. I am your mentor, Jesus seems to say. I am your guide. I ignore it. The mask I've worn, the perfect Christian professional climbing the corporate ladder, has become a prison. And now in this moment of betrayal, Jesus is offering me something different. Freedom. I grip my steering wheel and bow my head. For the first time in years, I pray without pretense, without trying to sound polished or professional. I pray with the raw honesty of a broken heart. Help me through this. It hurts. God, I hurt. The sun sets over San Antonio's skyline, painting the sky in brilliant oranges and purples. Tomorrow I'll have to face the office again, face Javier, face the truth about my carefully constructed facade. But tonight, in this moment of crushing revelation, I feel like I'm slowly dying, drowning without a life raft. How did I get here? 3 months earlier, life looked completely different. I remember walking through San Antonio's historic district that spring morning, confidence coursing through my veins as I headed to meet Javier at our usual cafe. The morning sun painted the old Spanish architecture in shades of gold, and I felt equally blessed. Buenos dias, mi estudiante favorito. Javier's warm greeting carried across the courtyard as I approached our table. 5 years into our mentorship, these morning meetings had become sacred to me. The coffee was always perfect, but the guidance was even better. I had met Javier at a professional networking event when I was fresh out of college, eager but unsure how to navigate the corporate world, as a young Latino professional. He took me under his wing immediately, becoming more than just a mentor. In many ways, he filled the role of a spiritual guide, too. "Remember what I always tell you, Alejandro," he would say, leaning forward with that characteristic intensity. "Success isn't just about talent, it's about patience and trusting the process." I nodded, soaking in every word like they were drops of pure wisdom. Looking back now, I can see how pride had blinded me. I was so focused on building my career that I had begun to drift from my relationship with Jesus. Sunday mornings that used to be spent in worship were now dedicated to preparing for Monday meetings. My prayers had become shallow requests for professional advancement rather than genuine communion with God. The signs were there, but I refused to see them. When promising opportunities would mysteriously evaporate, Javier always had a reasonable explanation. "The timing isn't right," he would say, "or there's something better coming." I trusted him completely, never questioning why doors kept closing. That spring morning at the cafe, I was sharing my excitement about a major project opportunity. "This could be my breakthrough moment," I said, barely touching my coffee as I outlined my plans. Javier smiled, that knowing smile I had come to rely on, but something felt different. There was a shadow behind his eyes I hadn't noticed before. "Patience, Alejandro," he said as always. "Let me handle the introductions. You focus on being ready when the moment comes." I remember feeling a flutter of unease, but I pushed it aside. After all, this was Javier Fur, my mentor, my guide, my padrino in the professional world. My Bible sat unopened on my nightstand those days, gathering dust while I gathered accolades and recommendations, or so I thought. I was building my house on sand, placing my trust in human wisdom rather than divine guidance. The success I chased felt just within reach, but somehow always remained a step ahead. I had everything backward then. My prayers were all about asking God to bless my plans instead of seeking His will for my life. When people asked about my faith, I would say all the right things, but my heart was focused on climbing the corporate ladder rather than drawing closer to Jesus. The old Spanish missions that dotted our meeting route stood as silent witnesses to my misplaced faith. Their crosses reached toward heaven while I reached for earthly success. Jesus was waiting patiently for me to remember where my true source of guidance should come from, but I was too blinded by ambition to see it. I didn't know then that my carefully constructed world was about to crumble. But God, in His infinite wisdom and mercy, was already preparing to use my greatest professional disappointment to lead me back to His perfect guidance. Sometimes our deepest wounds become the doorways to our greatest healing. I just couldn't see it yet. The morning after discovering my mentor's betrayal, I walked into work with a plan. I'd confront him professionally, clear the air, and salvage what remained of my career. But when I reached his office, the door was locked. He'd called in sick. The next day was the same, and the next. For 2 weeks he managed to avoid me completely, always one step ahead. Meanwhile, rumors started circulating through the office. Whispers followed me down hallways. Co-workers who used to smile now looked away. I tried reaching out to human resources, thinking they could mediate the situation. That was my first major mistake. "We've received multiple complaints about your performance," the HR director told me, sliding a folder across her desk. "Javier has documented everything. 3 years of manufactured evidence against me. Projects I'd successfully completed were now filled with critical notes I'd never seen before." My stomach churned as I flipped through page after page of lies. I left that meeting in a daze, wandering through San Antonio's historic district. The familiar smell of Mexican spices from street vendors usually brought comfort, but now it just made me nauseous. I found myself outside the old cathedral where my abuela used to take me. I hadn't been inside in years. The cool darkness welcomed me. I sat in the back pew, remembering how I used to pray here as a child. But those prayers felt hollow now, memorized words without meaning. I realized I knew all about Jesus from years of Catholic school, but I didn't actually know him. The next week I made my second critical mistake. I reached out to a senior executive who'd always seemed supportive, hoping she could help clear my name. She listened sympathetically, promised to investigate, and then promptly reported everything to Javier. Things escalated rapidly after that. My access to key projects was revoked. Longtime clients suddenly requested different representatives. My email inbox filled with formal warnings about professional conduct and performance improvement plans. One rainy afternoon, I sat in my car in the parking garage, gripping the steering wheel until my knuckles turned white. I had always believed that hard work and integrity would win out in the end. But now everything I'd built was crumbling, and my attempts to fix it only made things worse. That's when I heard it, not an audible voice, but a presence. A whisper in my spirit asking, "Who are you really trusting, Alejandro?" The question hit me like a physical blow. I'd been trying to save myself, fix everything through my own strength and connections. I broke down right there in that parking garage. "God," I whispered, "I don't just want to know about you anymore. I need to know you, really know you, because I can't do this on my own." The rain drummed on my car roof as tears streamed down my face. For the first time, I wasn't praying memorized words or asking for things to be fixed. I was finally having a real conversation with Jesus, admitting my complete helplessness. The circumstances hadn't changed. My career was still in shambles. My mentor was still working against me, and I had no idea what tomorrow would bring. But peace settled over me, deep and unexplainable. As I drove home that evening, the setting sun broke through the clouds, painting the sky in brilliant oranges and purples over San Antonio's skyline. I didn't know it then, but this crisis wasn't just destroying my career. It was destroying my self-reliance. And in its place, Jesus was building something I'd never expected, a genuine relationship with him that would change everything. The failures that seemed so devastating were actually clearing the way for something greater. I just couldn't see it yet. But for the first time since this nightmare began, I felt hope. Not because circumstances would improve, but because I wasn't facing them alone anymore. The envelope lay open on my coffee table, its contents scattered like shattered glass across the surface. Each printed email, each documented lie from Javier, felt like another knife in my back. The San Antonio night pressed against my windows, as dark as my thoughts. I reached for the bottle of tequila, my hands trembling. The liquid burned, but not enough to numb the truth. My mentor, the man I trusted with my future, had been systematically destroying my career prospects for years. My home felt like a museum of false hopes. Academic awards gleamed dully on the walls, mocking me with what could have been. The small altar in the corner, with La Virgen de Guadalupe watching silently, seemed to judge my failures. "¿Por qué, Dios?" I whispered into the emptiness. Why did you let me trust him? The words caught in my throat, choking me with their bitterness. 5 years. 5 years of missed opportunities that Javier had quietly sabotaged. 5 years of watching others advance while I remained stuck, believing I wasn't good enough. The revelation should have freed me, but instead it crushed me under its weight. I stumbled to my knees, the tequila bottle rolling away across the hardwood floor. The sound echoed through my empty living room like a death knell. Everything I'd believed about my abilities, about my intelligence, about life, It all felt like ash in my mouth. My mother's voice echoed in my memory. Dios tiene un plan, mijito. God has a plan. But what kind of plan was this? What kind of God would let someone twist my faith in people, in myself so completely? The city lights flickered through my windows, casting strange shadows on the wall. I felt as though I was drowning in darkness, each breath more difficult than the last. The cross hanging above my bed seemed to mock my pain. Jesus, I whispered, my voice breaking, where are you? The silence that followed was deafening. My phone buzzed with another message from work. Everything I'd built my life around felt like a house of cards, collapsing in slow motion. The thought of facing another day, of pretending everything was fine, felt impossible. I crawled to the corner of my living room, pressing my forehead against the cool wall. The tears came then, hot and bitter, years of suppressed pain, breaking free like a dam bursting. I can't do this anymore, I sobbed. I can't. My gaze fell on my belt, then to the balcony door. Dark thoughts whispered seductive solutions. It would be so easy to make the pain stop, to silence the voice of failure that echoed in my head. Jesus, I whispered again, but this time different. Jesus, I have nothing left. Nothing. Help me, I don't know what to do. The words died in my throat. Even prayer felt pointless. I curled into myself, feeling smaller than I ever had before. The darkness pressed in, suffocating, absolute. But somewhere in that darkness, in that complete emptying of myself, something shifted. Not a voice, not a light, but a presence. As if someone sat with me in my brokenness, wordlessly sharing my pain. I don't know how long I stayed there, crumpled on my floor. Minutes or hours blurred together, but in that space between despair and dawn, I sensed something I hadn't expected, the faintest whisper of peace. Not answers, not solutions, just a quiet certainty that even here, in my lowest moment, I wasn't truly alone. That maybe, just maybe, this wasn't the end of my story. The night pressed on, but something in me had changed. I'd come to a place no man should allow another human take him to. It made me angry to think I'd thought of ending my life because of what? A man hurt me? A job? No, not happening ever again. In surrendering everything, my pride, my plans, my very will to continue, I'd stumbled into a truth I'd never fully understood before. Jesus didn't promise to prevent our betrayals. He promised to meet us in them. Dawn would come eventually, but for now, I simply sat in the darkness, letting my tears fall, no longer fighting to understand. Surrendering to the right person is the beginning of wisdom and salvation. My phone buzzed, startling me from my spiral of anger and vengeance. It was a text from my abuela. Recuerda quién eres, hijo. Eres un hijo de Dios, antes que todo. Remember who you are, son. You are a child of God before anything else. The words hit me like a physical force, breaking through the walls of bitterness I'd been building. With trembling hands, I reached into my glove compartment and pulled out the small Bible my abuela had given me at graduation. The leather was still stiff from disuse. As I opened it, the pages fell to Psalm 118 and my eyes fixed on verse 8. It is better to take refuge in the Lord than to trust in humans. If only I'd paid heed to these words. The truth pierced my heart like an arrow. I had placed all my trust in Javier, making his approval my North Star. I had sought validation in my success, in my rising status in San Antonio's business community, in everything except my identity as God's beloved child. There in my parked car, with the setting sun painting the historic district in shades of gold, I broke. Jesus, I whispered, my voice cracking, I apologize for how blind I've been. My eyes are now open. I see what I've done, understand the choices in front of me. I choose you. I surrender everything to you. The peace that washed over me in that moment defied description. It wasn't happiness, my situation was still a mess, but something deeper. The tether connecting Javier and myself were broken. That night marked the beginning of my real relationship with Christ. Not the cultural Christianity I'd grown up with, but an authentic, desperate clinging to Jesus as my only hope. I spent hours listening to teachings on Jesus, letting God's truth replace the lies I'd believed about my worth and purpose. The path forward wasn't easy. Each morning, I had to choose to trust God instead of falling back into bitterness toward Javier. Walking into that office required a courage I could only find in Christ. But as I began to seek God's validation rather than the world's, He opened doors I never could have imagined. I learned to pray for Javier instead of plotting revenge. Lord, help me see him through your eyes, became my daily petition. The anger didn't disappear overnight, but Jesus' presence made it bearable, transforming it slowly into something like compassion. One morning, during my prayer time, God gave me a vision bigger than my pain. What if my experience could help prevent others from facing similar betrayal? What if this crisis was actually preparation for my true calling? Today, 3 years later, I run a marketing agency built on integrity and mentorship. We specifically focus on supporting young Latino professionals, teaching them to root their identity in Christ rather than career success. The betrayal that nearly destroyed me became, in God's hands, the very thing He used to reveal my true purpose. Every time I share my story with our mentees, I'm amazed at how God's grace redeemed even my darkest moments. That Bible verse still sits on my desk. It is better to take refuge in the Lord than to trust in humans. It's no longer just words on a page. It's the testimony of my life. The old Alejandro died in that car that evening. But the man Christ raised up in his place is someone I never dreamed I could be. My abuela was right. I am a child of God before anything else. And that identity, unlike any earthly success or relationship, can never be sabotaged or taken away.